Hi, and welcome to CryptoBiography. I'm your host, Brandon Starr. This is episode 414 of CryptoBiography, and it's part one of a new story, The Herd in the Army. And here we go. Tarv looked into the sky. The moon was in the horns. This was the bull of the moon. Soon it would be a new moon, and the moon would become pregnant with itself. Then the arms of the heifer would appear, then become more and more pregnant, until it was full and birthed itself. Then it would recede until it was the bull again. Tarv could not remember why the moon was always referred to as a heifer, which was a cow that hadn't had a child yet. He supposed the moon, since it was always changing, was always new. He loved and hated the moon being both male and female, reminded him of both of his parents who were gone. His mother had died when he was but a few years old. Fortunately, when he was fully into his cud, he had a few memories of her, but not many. The ones he still had, he thought about often, afraid to let them fade. His father had died only the previous winter. He was a fisherman, and a storm had come up suddenly and taken his ship out to sea. He'd never been seen again. Now he was apprenticed to one of the few blacksmiths on the entire island. He supposed he was lucky. A lot of young Minotaurs in situations like his ended up in the mines or doing other difficult labor. The smith, Braun, could work with copper and tin, but mostly turned them into bronze and worked that. Tarv was learning to help him. Often this was simple grunt work, pumping the bellows or stoking the fires. But he was watching and learning carefully. He looked some more at the horns of the crescent, waning moon, and thought more about his father. Perhaps he could become a fisherman instead. But he was content with his new lot. "Good night, Father. Good night, Mom," he said quietly, and re-entered the smithy where he had a cot. He needed to get back to sleep. Braun woke him up early, as he always did. Tarv was tired, but not so tired he couldn't work. He got up, grabbed a handful of nuts from his earthen jar, ate them, and started feeding the fires and pumping the bellows. One of his friends, Marta, a young cow from next door, where they sold baled hay, swung by. She had a small sheaf of grass for Tarv, as she sometimes did. "You need to eat more grass," she said. "It's not good for you to let your cud go wanting." "I can take care of all my hunger with nuts, fruit, and fish," Tarv said. "But thanks," he added. He even took a handful and started eating on it, smiling at Marta while going back to pumping the bellows. He placed the rest of the grass on a small, clean shelf behind him. She watched him for a moment, then smiled and left. He thought about her for a while. He had a lot of time to think with his work. He liked her, but his mind drifted to his work. He hoped that soon he'd be learning to shape the metal, the true work of a smith. He'd been given a bit of tin and been allowed to work it into various shapes. The piece of metal had been pounded into so many shapes he wondered if there was a limit. Tin by itself was easily melted, so he was able to use the heat of the forge as it cooled from its daily peak. And he was getting pretty good at it, he thought. Sometimes he beat it into a recognizable shape, sometimes into a useful one. Or it would be a useful shape if he was working bronze. Braun had been a friend of his parents and had taken him in after the death of his father. Tarv knew that many apprentices had to work much longer than he had to start working metal. Still, he yearned to learn more, faster. "May I try some copper soon?" he asked Braun. Soon," Braun said between hammer strikes on a scythe blade he was forming. They worked through the day. When the day's work was over and Tarv had put away the tools and done the other day's end chores, he heated his tin and formed several shapes. His mind returned to Marta. They were getting older, and Tarv was becoming conscious that Marta was becoming interested in him in a romantic way. He wasn't sure how he felt, but he had liked Marta for a long time. He broke off part of his already small bar of tin and started beating it into a shape. He worked it and worked it with the smallest tools in the forge. When he was done, he had formed the tin into a nice replica of a mallow flower. This was the kind of flower he had seen Marta adorn the hair on top of her head with, ringing her small horns. That night, at their dinner, Marta's father came over to pick up the scythe that Braun had made for him. If only my old one could be repaired any more, he was saying to Bron as Tarv slipped out of the room. But the new one will be a huge improvement, I'm sure. And I'll be happy to get a bit more of the old metal to work, Bron was replying. He added something about supply difficulties, but Tarv couldn't hear it as he was shutting the door to the little house attached to the forge. As he hoped, Marta was there. He had his little tin mallow flower in his hand. Hi. The sun was going down over her shoulder, but he could see she was smiling. Hey, Tarv. I made something for you today, he said, not knowing what else to talk about. He held out the tin flower. Oh, it's lovely. It's a mallow, isn't it? I love them. She started to put it up in her hair, but then realized it didn't have a pin. I can find a pin and secure it. Right, Tarv said. He'd only meant it as a small art object, not as jewelry, so he hadn't included a way to attach it to anything. I can make a pin for you, I'm sure. That would be great, Marta said brightly. She put the flower in the one pocket in front of her dress. They walked out into the dusk. And that's the end of the story for this week. Obviously, lots more to go. If you have any comments or questions about this episode or previous episodes, cryptobiography@gmail.com, or hit us up on Facebook or Blue Sky. And thanks for listening. Words and music copyright 2025, Brandon Starr, all rights reserved. Characters and events are fictional, fictionalized, or satirical.